of spiritual ventriloquism. You are listening to Dummy himself. Well, we are coming up on Pescha here in just a few short weeks, and we're going to be looking at uh, the Feast of Unleavened Bread as well. Well, one of the questions I had given to me last week on, I believe it was on a Messenger conversation, was I was asked about yeast presence in beer, distillates, and wine. And whether you can consume those beverages during the feast of unleavened bread. Beer, I would probably maybe avoid for conscience sake, if nothing else. There could be some yeast present in the beer left, but it's probably dead by then. But it's the carbohydrates and the sugars which lead to you producing your own yeast is more of an issue than any live active yeast being present in the beer. Usually at alcohol by volume above 9%, yeast are destroyed via conversion into either sugars or alcohol. So anyway, so what I'm going to talk about there, and wine, of course, that's consumed at Pescha. And distillates, as far as, strong drink, shakar, which would include, distillates, brandies, and things like that, they're pretty much completely void of any yeast. So the question was about yeast, and so I wanted to cover the topic of yeast and what we have to understand in the days of Moshe, in the days of Israel, and they're coming out of the land of the Mitzrahites. They didn't have what we call red star yeast, baking powder, baking soda. I don't think they had any of those things. What they did have abundance of, especially in the desert areas, was atmospheric leavens. Atmospheric leavens are leavens or yeast that is in the atmosphere. Okay, and so that is usually by kneading their dough in the open air. Usually they did this outside the tent, things like that. If they let the dough stay exposed to the air for a while, yeast would then enter into the bread and make it leaven. Now, it wasn't the super puffy King Hawaiian bread that we have today, but it was considered leaven if it was exposed to the air for a considerable length of time and or in contact with the dust particulates that were in the air. And that's what these atmospheric yeast attach themselves to, is the dust particulates. And you can see this brought out in Exodus chapter 12. It says, verse 33, it says, "Now the Egyptians urged the people, sending them out of the land quickly, for they thought, we will all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, and their kneading bowls bound up in their clothes on their shoulders." So in other words, they covered their kneading bowls up, their kneading troughs, covered it with cloth, and then threw it on their shoulders. So B'nai Israel acted according to the word of Moses. They asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing, and Adonai gave the people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians and let them have what they asked for. So they plundered the Egyptians. So here we go. They covered their dough, didn't allow it to be exposed to the air. So there is a tradition in the old days and still observed today by Jews, some Hebrews, Eastern Hebrews, African Hebrews, and things like that. They go through the house and they do a house cleaning. They, for the sake of commingling of things, they take the things out of the house today, modern use like Red Star baking powder and things like that. But what is really important was the fact of what they were actually doing when they would clean out their cupboards and tables in their house. They would literally do a thorough cleaning and mopping and damp wiping everything in the house. And that is to remove those dust particulates that atmospheric leavens or yeast would attach themselves to. And that's why, you know, they would go through the house, you know, with a candle and whatnot. Now, there's scripture for that. Yah himself that said that he was going to search Yerushalayim with candles. So, and that's in the book of Zephaniah, chapter 1, verse 12. At that time, I will search Jerusalem with lamps and punish the men whose spirits have hardened, who say in their hearts, Adonai will do neither good nor evil. Okay? So, in other words, these men's, obviously, their hearts have become leavened. Their hearts have been exposed to the atmospheric leaven so long that they've actually literally become hard. You know, because air will eventually dry out the dough and become like a rock. And this is also confirmed over in 1 Corinthians. The Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 5:7, the Apostle Shaul said, get rid of the old hametz, and that is the Hebrew word for leaven. Get rid of the old hametz so you may be a new batch, just as you are unleavened. For Messiah, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. And let us therefore celebrate the feast not with old hametz, the hametz of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread, the matzah of sincerity and truth. Okay? So, we need to discard and clean out our hearts. Allow Yahweh to search our hearts and to help us rid ourselves of the old leaven so that we may become a new batch of dough. Okay? So that the hametz that we become, so that we don't become hametz or leaven with malice and wickedness. Okay, here is my last little scripture is in Ephesians 2:2. Okay, it says, we'll just go ahead and start with verse 1. You were dead in your trespasses and sins. At that time you walked in the way of this world, in the conformity to the ruler of the domain of the air, the ruler of the spirit, who is now operating in the sons of disobedience. Okay? And in the King James it says, you who were dead in trespasses and sins hath he quickened. Okay? Because at that time, not according to the prince of the power of the air, or the Halal, or the Satan, okay, the spirit who rules, the spirit of disobedience that is now ruling in the hearts of men who have become hardened and who have become leavened. Okay, so we are not to be leavened with old leaven. We are not to follow the inclinations, the evil inclinations of the Hallel, and those are internalized too, because there's very few people, there's not a lot of people that actually have the devil audibly speaking in their ear. He's speaking in the spirit of their mind. So we are to cast aside those voices, because there's a lot of voices out there in the world, and none of them are without significance. So, who is now operating in the sons of disobedience? See, it's the prince of the power of the air. It is he who spreads these spiritual atmospheric leavens, yeast, hametz, and they fall into the dough of the sons of men. And so it says here, we too all lived among them in the cravings of our flesh, indulging in the desires of the flesh and mind. By nature we were the children of wrath, just like others. But Yah, who is rich in mercy, because of his great love which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, even when we were dead in our leavened state, the leaven of malice and wickedness and bitterness and envy and strife. He's made us alive together with Messiah, with Moshiach. By grace or by favor have we been delivered. And he raised us up with him and has seated us with him in heavenly places in Messiah Yeshua, to show in the Olam Haba the measure of richness of his grace and kindness towards us in Messiah Yeshua. So, that's it. Leaven comes from the air. Nice thing to remember. Hope you all learned something, got some understanding. Shalom.